does the market still make sense? Am I still generating the returns that I'm making to continue my path and reach that goal that I set out to in the beginning?
Welcome back, investor, to another passive income adventure fueled by commercial real estate. If you're new, this is the podcast about how to figure out a way to live the lifestyle that you want on your terms, whether it's a 9 to 5 or retiring earlier or whatever that looks like. Multiple streams of income and passive income are really the key to designing the lifestyle that you really want to live. It looks different for everybody. And so the story that we're hearing today is from Aileen Prak, who is a multifamily owner and operator, as well as passive investor, limited partner. Basically, she started as a limited partner and became active. And I'm going the other direction where I started as an active operator and moving towards more passive limited partner. And so it's really interesting to hear people's different stories, their different motivations, so that we can see all the options ahead of us and really relate to the people that are sharing their stories so that you can reach out. But at the same time, recognizing that there's a common thread that goes through all of this where we have very similar dreams and motivations and things that we're working towards, even if it does look a little bit different in the details. So Aileen started out in aerospace finance, and after she had her first baby, had some realizations that some things in her life needed to change. And what you're going to see through her journey is how she's consistently, successfully balancing the demands that she has as a mom and a wife with a working mother, and also her passive and her active, not putting everything off until tomorrow and sacrificing everything today, but being able to enjoy the fruits of their labors and their lifestyle now and be able to put up extra cash so that they can invest it and increase their streams of income. If this is something that you're struggling with, of finding this balance of what to work on, when to pivot, how much to focus on the short term versus the long term, Aileen does a masterclass on how to balance all of our competing concerns that we have in our life. There's a lot to get out of her story, so let's just jump right into it. Welcome to the show today, Aileen. I'm so glad to have you with us. You have this really interesting financial background in the aerospace finance industry. And I love the story that you told us before the show about how you basically went from this great dream job to realizing like, hey, I've got to make a change and get more passive income and get out of the rat race. And so welcome to the show. Please just start with introducing yourself. Give us a little bit of your elevator pitch, and then would love to hear more about your background and how you got to this point that you are as a multifamily investor.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Emma. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So yes, as you mentioned, I have a background in aerospace finance. So I've been in the industry for about 13 years or 13 years so far, and really started from a family that came to the United States to find better opportunities and everything like that. So education, getting a strong foundation was really a big part of growing up and really set the stage for everything that I do from here out, or from ever since I was young to where I am today. I went to school, went to get good grades, got my master's, then went off and then got a good paying job in aerospace. And so I continued to work up the corporate ladder, just being in the, what we say, like the rat race, and just working every day, because that's all we know is go to school, get good grades, find a great job, and then just maintain the course. And then it really wasn't until 2018 or so where I became pregnant with my first child. And at that time, I remember you work the job and you get maternity leave. So when he was born, I was able to spend at that time 3 months at home with him. So being together and being a first time mom, being able to spend 24 hours a day with him was like a super blessing. But after those 3 months were over, I had to go back to work and I had to find out a suitable solution to be able to figure out where can I put him? What kind of care can I give to him while I'm not there? How do I build up the trust to leave somebody who is super helpless and trust somebody is going to take care of him to the best of their ability while I'm not there to be able to do so? At that point, we had to make the decision to put him into daycare. And for me, being in California, the commute time is really far. I used to have to van pool all the time to work. So it would usually take about an hour and a half to 2 hour commute one way back and forth to work. So when I would take the van pool to work, I wouldn't have a car of my own. So I remember there's one point a couple of weeks in after we had dropped him off at daycare, I get a call from the school and they said, hey, your son, he has a really high fever. You need to come pick him up and take him home. And he won't be able to come back until his fever comes down for 24 hours at least. And so as a first time mom, I'm thinking in my head, I don't have a car to get to him. I don't know how how I'm going to do this. It's going to take me so long to get and pick up my son. And as a first time mom, not being able to be there like immediately on the when your son needs you, you feel like you let yourself down a little bit. You let him down. And so it really put a big mental toll on me and my husband as well, because he works pretty far too. So it would take him a little while to get and pick him up too. So we're trying to figure out and calling the people around us, like, can somebody help with this situation? So at that point, I thought to myself, there has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way for me to be able to be there for my son when I need to be and have a little bit more control over my time and my freedom. And so that's when we started our passive investing journey, started looking for different ways to create other streams of income for ourselves in case something were to happen, that we have this safety net or at least an opportunity to make that decision. It's not that we're going to have to work anymore. It's like we get to choose to work. So we've stumbled across real estate, and we always knew real estate was going to be a great way to invest and build up your wealth. But we always knew that it was in California. The traditional way of investing was in your backyard. And for us, we were looking for quite some time in California. The numbers didn't pencil out. We kept getting outbid by a bunch of people. So we're like, okay, let's look out of state. So we ended up doing some single family investing, realized it wasn't as passive as we were thinking, and then stumbled upon multifamily syndications where we could actually invest in other people's deals. We're not operating it. And so there's not really a lot of hands-on management of it at all. It's really, you leave it up to the sponsors, the operators to do it. So that was like a whole different way of thinking about how to invest and how to apply your money and create passive income for ourselves. And so at that point, we started learning more, listening to podcasts, and then decided to take that leap and invest passively in a syndication after we've done our due diligence and vetted out the sponsor we felt comfortable with. And then from there, continued to invest passively in more syndications. And that eventually grew into being operators ourselves and being on the general partnership side of things. So today I like to say we work actively to invest passively. And so everything that we're doing now is just putting it back into the passive income so that ultimately we can get to our end goal where it's like, you have the choice, you have your time freedom, you can spend it where you want, with who you want, and then whenever you want to do it.
Sounds like what you've chosen to do to increase your streams of income, because there are a lot of different ways to do this, but the bottom line is like, we need to get more money so that we can invest. And whether that's cutting back on your expenses and just both of you working your job and having more to put aside, or bringing in extra streams of income through some sort of a high side hustle, or even passive investing that's going to bring in some higher returns than you could get. It seems to be the common theme. It's like, no matter how much money you make, you have to take a good look at your life and say, okay, how are we going to take the money that we have or the money that we can make and get this invested in some way so that it starts throwing off passive income? And for you, you said safety net. And that's why we started this journey as well, as for a safety net. My husband's in tech. There are a lot of layoffs, startup land. And it didn't take me very long to realize this could be more than just layoff insurance. This could actually retire us early and really early. And so did you have a similar type of growth path to realize, hey, we could keep doing this for a short period of time and be able to actually retire pretty quickly? So what did your goals look like at that point when you were like, let's get going, and you realized this was a powerful investing tool?
Yeah, so you look at your own situation, you look at your expenses, what you're spending, how much is it going to be to sustain? And so it's never been our way of thinking to compress our spending or to cut down and live just down to the bare bones where you're just like try to save like a bundle of money and then just live off of that. For us, it was, how do we sustain our lifestyle and how do we continue and at least provide and live the lifestyle that we want to without having to compromise like certain luxuries or certain way of living that we've been accustomed to. So we work kind of backwards for it and we look at it, we're like, okay, we need to do this, or we would need to invest in this many passive income opportunities, syndications, and then what are the returns that we're looking at? And so from there, it's okay, if we do it for X number of years, and if they exit within the 5 years, we can take all of that, reinvest it back in. And then after several years of doing this, you can definitely retire so much more earlier than the expected, like the 67 years that you are anticipating before even getting into this.
I know a lot of people who say, I don't see myself doing this job until I'm 65. But then when you say, oh, what are your other plans? Are like, I don't know. And so having sometimes those turning point moments that make you think, okay, I don't think I can actually do this till I'm 65. I don't think I can do this for another 5 years or even 10 years. What was your timeline like once you realized, hey, we can do this? How did your goals shift? And what was your speed? Where you're like, hey, we can take as long as we need to. We love our jobs. Or was it like, hey, we need to make some changes pretty fast here?
So it was a combination of both, right? It's like we need to
Mm-hmm.
make swift actions, start deploying the money that we were saving up, the money that we were income or we were saving up and investing into other things like the stock market or in your 401ks where we were traditionally saving our monies. So now we had to look at our situation and decide if we were going to redirect all of that to something else. And so then afterwards, we were looking at all of that and we never wanted to get into a situation where, you know, either one of us loses a job or something like that, and then we would have to either leave or something would happen and we would be forced into a situation where one of us loses our income. And so by looking at all of that and trying to figure out, hey, so we did a combination of both. We were looking at both speed and reallocating our funds because we were traditionally investing in just 401ks. But once we decided and we found a way to this new way of investing into passive opportunities, then we decided to redirect some of that over into those types of opportunities instead. And so it was never really a line for us to, hey, we can just leave our job in this certain period of time. It was more of, hey, we have the option at a certain period of time if we continue at this pace to have the option of whether or not we want to stay or if we want to pursue other things, focus more on real estate full time. And so it was really just like getting to a point where we had that option of doing one or the other.
What did you end up doing in the short term with your son in the daycare? Because it was an immediate concern, but it didn't have an immediate answer. So what was your short-term solution?
So in the short term, we had to put him in the daycare. And so our immediate thing was let's find a way to start building up because you have to set a plan for yourself too, because we couldn't just jump into something full time 100% without making those proper steps, doing the due diligence, making sure that it was a viable option or a viable path for us to proceed. Whenever we make a decision, we're always looking at all the risks and how do we mitigate it and what are things going to look like if something happens. And so for us, it was always coming from a conservative approach. And so for the short time, we're like, we have to just suck it up, put him in the daycare, just continue working now, but find those ways to create that passive income and then try to build it up as quickly as possible. And for us, it was we had also limited amounts of time. So where would we be able to put our cash or put our money and capital to be able to generate as quickly as possible? And for us at that time, with the time that we had, and for us, it made sense in the syndication space to do that.
So take us up to the present day. When you got to the point where you thought, hey, we've been doing these syndications long enough as limited partners, I think we might be able to take a deal on as more general partners or managing partners. What did that transition look like? Because I think what struck me is that you talked about how you didn't want to have to completely downsize your lifestyle. You wanted a way to be able to generate more income so that you could continue to basically live the same standard of living you were, but bringing in extra income, which requires more time because now you have a job and a side business. And so what did that transition look like? And what was the decision process you went through in order to make all of those things meet and make all of those things work?
So it was like a gradual journey. And I think also, in a sense, when COVID had happened and things had shut down, everybody was working from home, it allowed us the freedom to think of things through a little bit more and what did we want to do. And we were saving so much time driving to the office at least 4 hours a day, having to get ready, wake up, drive, and then come back home sitting in traffic. And so for us, we took that time. So we didn't really lose any time necessarily. And we just took the time that we were driving in the car really and really applied that to our real estate journey. And that really helped move things along much more quickly than we would have imagined it. And so when we started our podcast also back in 2020, Our focus was just, hey, we started our education. We learned so much through other people's podcasts. We want to build out our network and learn as well, and then share with other people what we were learning along the way. And so we decided to jump on and start our own podcast. And then from there, we met different partners, and they're like, hey, would you be interested in looking at this opportunity as a general partner? And so it just gradually happened over time, because our set goal initially was we're just going to do this as limited partners. But because now we had this time on our hands that we were saving by being at home all the time, it changed the situation. It changed the environment much, much more.
Now, most people took that extra time that they saved on the commute and just watched more TV and relaxed more. So you're able to really be creative, use the resources that you have, because there could have been a lot of excuses that you made. Oh, we both have jobs, we have this baby, there's a lot going on, all of that. But instead, you just showed an ability to be resourceful and have a strong work ethic, and basically go out and say, okay, how can we give back and teach other people how to do what we've been doing? How do we get more involved? How do we learn more? So I think that the lesson that we can take away from that is that we all have excuses, but we also all have hidden resources that we can take advantage of if we just take a step back and think, okay, how am I going to make this work? That's why I asked, like, how did you make sure that all fit together? And that commute, that's like brilliant, because that's a lot of time that you could just put into your business after that.
Yeah. And especially surrounding yourself with people who are already doing it, whereas
Mhm.
in the space, they've been able to achieve a certain lifestyle or certain goals and everything like that. And we saw how they were able to do it. And so it just put a fuel under us, a fire. And we're like, if they can do it also, if we really put our mind to this and just take the time that we are saving by commuting, we can wake up early before my son wakes up. We can do interviews, or we can network and stuff like that on the East Coast. And we're just looking for ways to optimize our day to be able to grow it and to expedite our passive investing journey and building up our wealth. Then why not? It's a wasted opportunity if we don't.
Exactly. Are you back in the office now, commuting again?
Be the week, but not full time.
Okay. Now that's nice, because you go back to maybe a little bit of a hybrid or partial at home. So it helps you to be able to balance things a little bit better, I'm sure. I don't know. We definitely found a lot of freedom without, and our commute at that time was like 20 minutes, I think. And it's still, I couldn't believe how much time we were able to save just by ditching that 20-minute commute there and back. And we were able to do the same thing where we could convert it to time to running our business, to just a little bit of extra hair shaved here and there. It made such a huge difference. I can't even imagine how much time that would have saved with all those hours. So take us forward to today. Your background in finance is unique. Most people, one of the things that they shy away from in investing is they just don't want to look at the numbers. And so, how are you able to use that background to basically say, hey, we're going to go and do this new thing? I have a friend who's in a similar line of work as you. And when he switched over to multifamily, he's like, oh, I'm a spreadsheet genius. And then he looked at the spreadsheet and was like, oh, wow, I don't even know where to get the information to go research all to put this in. He said it was a completely new financial skill set for him to translate from his current job over to multifamily investing. So how are you able to make that shift? And how can other people who have some sort of financial background, like analysts, bookkeepers, investment specialists, anybody who has any kind of a financial background, how can they follow in your footsteps and do what you did?
So ultimately, when you're in like the financial space, one of the tools that you're working on day in and day out, your best friend, is an Excel spreadsheet. And
Yep.
when you're underwriting or when you're looking at real estate properties, it's also a lot of it is Excel also. It's a lot of it's the numbers. And so
Mhm.
I think when you're in finance, you find a way to look at the numbers and figure out a story that goes behind it. And how do you make that into something that makes sense and follow the trail essentially. And so you can apply that same skill sets into real estate. And so even though the formulas and the way things are calculated are a little bit different, but the story and how you analyze things and how you look at it is very similar. It's very transferable. Yeah, the formulas you'll have to figure out, like, okay, how do you calculate like ROI? How do you calculate like cash on cash? Like those types of things. But if you can understand how to make a story out of it, what do these numbers actually mean? What is, if I pull this trigger, how will it affect all the other inputs into the numbers? It really helps having that financial background to be able to analyze it and make a story out of it, because essentially numbers are numbers and numbers don't lie. You can put whatever you want into a spreadsheet. You have a reason, you put in your You pretty much put in your best estimates based off of situations and things that you've been finding out, and backing it up with knowledge and like the T12 or the rent rolls. You're backing it up with actual information and putting together like a forecast. So it's really helpful to have that background. And that's how it helped me, especially getting started looking at real estate, because the numbers don't scare me. I work with big numbers all the time. So when you're looking at big numbers in real estate, it's like, okay, I just have to understand and follow the story. What does it mean?
I don't think I've ever really thought about it in that sense before, that you're using the numbers to tell the story. Because me not coming from a financial background, I had to learn the financial part of it, and the storytelling part of it came a little bit more naturally because I came from a marketing background. But it's actually a really good point that you make, that if you have a financial background or a non-financial background, you're just bringing in numbers that are telling a story, and you have to figure out what story that's telling you. It's like having a quantitative data painting a qualitative picture. And that helps even non-financial people to be able to think about, what's my skill set that I can transfer over here. So was that the reason that you were first invited in as in more active roles, because you had that unique background? Because let's face it, like not a lot of people really like finance. We're always looking to outsource that. So was that kind of your opening to get into these kind of opportunities?
Essentially, in the beginning, it was like I have the skill sets, but then at the same time, I think also because I had built out the podcast, I had a lot of other connections as well. You could bring in your connections and your network to the partnership and add value that way as well. So I was able to help find other partners and other key members and bring it into the partnership as well to be able to close on those deals. And so it wasn't just the financial analysis aspect of it, but it was other skill sets, other value that I could bring to the table as well, because I had built out unknowingly a network of people that I could tap into if needed.
Yeah, that's key with the networking. It doesn't matter where you're coming from and what your previous skill set is. You cannot get away from networking to be successful in this industry, and it's something that you just really can't delegate. I know a lot of people are saying, I just want to keep my face down in the spreadsheets and just do the spreadsheets all day. But as they come up for air, they realize that they need other people, and that network is really what keeps things rolling. Whether it's a limited partner who's going to put some capital into the deal, somebody who has a high net worth that can sign on a loan, some sort of lender, lawyer, or a partner who can take over a certain aspect of the management. The networking is really what makes this industry go around. And so have you found yourself over the last couple of years of doing this more actively, kind of shifting roles at all into something that's a little less financial and more on the networking side? Or what does your day-to-day look like now with your business?
I'm fortunate enough that my business partner is also my husband. And
Mhm.
so he now focuses on the acquisition side and the underwriting. So I really don't do a lot of number crunching anymore and looking at the underwriting. I'm more focused on just the networking, building out our community, our network and everything like that within the business instead, and looking at how do we spread the word and how do we share our knowledge with other people, and then networking with potential partners as well across the US.
So one thing that I really struggle with when I'm operating a property, and why I've moved more into raising capital and becoming a more passive investor myself, is I don't like to do all of the day-to-day details. I feel like this is going to sound terrible, but every time there's a problem with the property, I have a tendency to panic and be like, oh, how are we going to pay for this? What are we going to do? And because it gives me anxiety to think about, there's a problem that we have to throw some money at that we weren't planning on. It's kind of like every time a kid comes up to you and they're like, mama, mama, and you're like, what? Like, I was doing this and then you just changed my plans there. So I've had to really take a step back from the day-to-day operations, because I just felt like mental health wise, I just wasn't really suited to it. And but you having so much more attention to detail in your previous career than I did. My detail was like making sure all of my graphic design things were lined up properly. But my attention to detail is very different now than it used to be. So have you found yourself functioning inside of the operations team? What's your role there? And is it something that you really love and want to do more of, or where do you see yourself evolving towards?
Yeah, so I think one of the great things about being in real estate is that it's a very collaborative team environment. And so even though everybody has like their set roles or like things that they specialize in, everybody has a voice. So
Mm.
whether or not be in terms of the business plan or how are we going to operate, how are we going to generate some more income, or do we need to bring in other team members to bring down some of the costs in terms of insurance or whatever like that, do like all of those types of things. Everybody has a voice, everybody looks at the spreadsheets. And so I think that's one of the areas where I'm really good at, is looking at do we have enough reserves? Because for me, it's like, how do we mitigate? For me, it's all about mitigating risks, especially in finance and having that background. It's, do we have enough reserves to cover the unknown unknowns? And so that's the main thing for me. It's, do we have sufficient reserves to cover for these types of unexpected, unforeseen events? And so I'll do those analysis. I'll ask the questions. If things come up, it's like I have the network you can tap into. It's like, do we need an attorney? Do we need a CPA? Or do we need like a new insurance person or maybe a new lender or something like that? Like I can bring in those people in as needed to the team as well. So it's, everybody works collaboratively together and everybody has a voice. So it's a really nice place to be in.
That's probably my favorite part about it too, is putting together a great team that has the right people to get all of the pieces together. I actually do well in large teams. I know we want to keep our teams typically pretty small, but I feel like I work well in large groups. And so we've been utilizing that skill, which to me, it's like you got to figure out what your superpower is and what you're good at that maybe other people are either not good at or they don't want to do. And for me, that's a large team. People are like, why do you have so many people on your team? It's because I like it and I can. And that is a unique thing because most people trying to keep teams super small and they're trying to basically keep the pie in as large of pieces as possible. But getting people together and making sure that everybody's moving in the same direction is something that I really like about it. So what's something that you do that you feel like is that skill that you bring to the table that maybe other people aren't willing to, don't like doing, don't want to do, but for you, it's, yeah, let's do some more of this. I love this part.
I think for me, it's the connections and the people aspect of it and finding like different opportunities to, there's some, like for example, I can give an example for a property that we were partners on, and so we're looking at it and I'm like, oh hey, we could potentially, on the podcast I had met an individual who worked with taxes, and there was like a different creative way that he was looking at how do we depreciate our taxes and doing things a little bit differently. So I was like, oh, this would be interesting because it's very applicable to the project that we're currently working on right now. So it's, hey, can we have our team members talk to this person and see, does it make sense? Because I think it could save us some more money down the road. It could help our investors and bring the returns out much better. And so it's like things like that, like looking for different opportunities and listening for like those small little wins and things like that. And how can we move the needle? I think that's one of the skill sets that I've been able to bring to the table.
So it sounds like a lot of thinking on your feet and being able to reach into that bank of people that you know or memories, or being able to keep good records so that you can look stuff up and just being able to find stuff and follow up with people. And that follow-up skill, most people are not very good at that. The fortune's in the follow-up for a reason. It's because if you're doing it, you're probably the only one doing it. That is actually one of the most important skills. I think people see this business, it is at its core a finance type of a business, but it really goes deeper than that, that knowing the people, knowing the resources, being able to put those together into a way that makes these larger deals run. Nobody runs these things by themselves, right? We always think it's a big nameless, faceless corporation, but there are people who work there and there are people with those skill sets who can put these kind of teams together and take down these huge deals if they can just put the right people in there. So that's a really valuable skill to have. And I don't think that's what I was expecting from a finance background. Like that's pretty specialized. And most people don't like doing it. So a lot of people really latch onto that as what they're bringing to the team. But it sounds like with the two of you together, you can really even differentiate inside of your marriage and specialize on things that one or the other of you is really gifted at. Paint us a few years into the future from now. What does your business look like? And what does your passive income investor journey look like? What adventures are you planning, either personally or professionally, that keep driving you now that you've turned this corner and you got your heads down and you're working towards something? Like, what are you working towards now and what does that look like?
So I think at every step of the way, or certain milestones, you got to reevaluate, does the market still make sense? Am I still generating the returns that I'm making to continue my path and reach that goal that I set out to in the beginning? And you got to learn how to pivot here and there if things are not working out or if you're not making as much traction as you are and stuff like that. And for example, like right now, the market is so volatile in real estate. Interest rates been moving around. It might stabilize a little bit in the next couple of months. Things have been up in the air quite a bit, and the flow of deals and opportunities that are coming around, even as a passive investor, you're seeing much less of it nowadays because the deals just don't pencil out and people aren't getting good deals to provide those returns anymore. So it's, do we need to pivot? Do we need to look at different opportunities and other asset classes also? And so within our in our passive investing journey, not just multifamily syndications, but other opportunities as well that make sense in terms of how do we continue to build out our passive income. If the multifamily, we're not seeing as many opportunities out there, can't deploy our capital as quickly as we had expected. So we have to find something to offset that, maybe some more self storage, or maybe like ATMs, or looking at commercial triple net leases. You're constantly evaluating, taking a look at these different opportunities to see if one thing is not like fully optimized at one point, we can still focus on it, but how do we also supplement to cover and really move the needle forward? So that's where what we're looking at right now.
I've heard that building wealth comes through specialization and niching down and really becoming an expert at what that is you're investing in, but hanging on to it, preservation of wealth, which is the goal during a recession, basically, is diversification. And so being able to switch that lever between I'm an expert at this is my niche, and being able to say, and how can I diversify? It really brings into play your other skill set, where you know what people define, you know how to vet out operators. And so if you need to go into some other niche that maybe you're not the expert at, you know how to find those experts. And I think that's really the value in diversification. And so those skills are coming in handy even as you're pivoting and basically diversifying into something that might not be your particular expertise. And then the more you do it, obviously you can develop a couple of different special things that you're really focusing on. So those networking skills and being able to pivot, you've shown again and again, that is something that you're really skilled at doing and really willing to do. Even going back to the beginning of the story, when you're going to a great job and suddenly something comes up and you're like, okay, how can I pivot from here? So that willingness to just think outside the box and make changes is a huge part of success in this industry. So how did you develop that mindset? And what are you doing to further that mindset as you're looking into your future?
I think it just comes from how we were grown up, or how we were raised growing up, and the conservative mindset, and just looking for the opportunities to really take a look at your situation, taking a look at the opportunities out there, trying to find what works best, because everybody has a different situation and your situation is always constantly changing and moving. And so it's like, as you're looking for opportunities, as you're trying to find your way in life and trying to figure out, like, what do I want to be when I grow up? It's trying to find out what that optimal path is. And it's never easy, but the more you network and the more you listen to people who are already way past where you want to be, the people that you look up to, the more and more you surround yourselves with people who are thinking bigger, or who have already done it, like-minded people who have that mindset of wanting to grow and not just retract, but really focusing on opportunities out there, and listening and following in their footsteps, and trying to figure out, like, how are they being able to do it? How can we follow in their footsteps? We can't be experts in everything, but we have our core, we have our foundations, we built that part up and it's steady. And so once we have that steady foundation, you can start building upon that foundation, so that you're not on the three-legged wobbly table, you're on a solid four-pillar table rock. And so as you start doing that, it's surrounding yourselves by the people that you want to emulate, that you want to follow in their footsteps and learn from them. And the more you surround yourself with those like-minded people, the more you start to expand and you start thinking bigger and better things. Because if you're just operating in your own little niche or your area, you don't know what's out there and you don't know what the possibilities are.
So this is something that happens to beginners a lot, where they get shiny object syndrome before they
Mm-hmm.
become an expert in one thing. And so I think it's really important to be able to balance becoming a specialist in something and then also being able to diversify without getting that shiny object. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So how did you decide on the niche that you're in right now, rather than just being distracted by a lot of different things and using your network to be like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this? How do you narrow in on what you're actually going to do versus what you could do?
Yes, I totally get the shiny object syndrome, because you hear about a new opportunity and you're like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And you want to deep dive into it, or you want to learn a little bit more about it. But the more you start doing that, you realize how little you're actually making traction to your goal. You're trying to catch a million different things at once. And when you're trying to do that, you're not going to catch anything at all. So you look at, what are your skill sets? What is one area where you really heavily lean towards typically, and that you really enjoy looking at and doing, and then start investing more time into that and putting your focus in there, and start thinking about, like, how do we grow that side of it out? Because once you start start thinking about other things and trying to tackle everything all at one time, it's really hard to build up or to be an expert in that area when you have a million things going on. And then you look back at it and you're like, oh, I didn't make the traction that I expected it to be. But it's good to always, while you're in that niche, while you're still building out that expertise in your foundation, keeping your eye out for other opportunities as well, and just keeping your ears and keeping a tab on what's going on, but still focusing on making those moves in your foundation and what your like core focus is.
Yeah, I find that there are only so many drums that people are beating. And the first time you hear about something, it's, oh, they're going to do short-term rentals, they're going to do self-storage, they're going to do triple net commercial. And you think that there are so many things out there, and there in ways there are, but at the same time, you start hearing about the same things over and over again. And so instead, I would just focus on, okay, what do you love about what you're doing? And what do you hate about what you're doing? Because I started to hear the same things coming out over and over again. And I was trying to stay ahead of getting to the part where they were burned out on something and making the pivot before I hit that point. Because when you hear them saying the same thing, oh, I burned out on this or I burned out on that, especially when it's very common and it's chronic, I would just listen to that and just think, okay, where is it that they're trying to pivot to? And can I pivot to their before that? Can I get there earlier in my investing journey, pivot with them, even though they're ahead of me? Because once you're in a pivot, you're kind of at the same level as the person you're pivoting with. And so that's a way that I was able to level up really quickly, is just to pay attention, not only copying what people were doing, but anticipate where that was going and make the shift when they're making the shift before I got burned out, before I figured out all of the, oh, I'm so tired of this. And I think I had the freedom to do that because, same like you, my husband is my partner. And so he was working and keeping things together. And then I was able to really focus on the investing business. It's really valuable because I think, especially for beginners, it's so easy to get lost out there in the shiny weeds.
And the thing too is, if you look at real estate investing, building up your passive income, your wealth, if you focus on the short-term gains, it's really easy to give up or to pivot too soon. You have to look in the long term. What does it take to get you there in the long term? And how do we make this sustainable? Because if you don't make it sustainable, it's so easy to have everything crumble or to fall apart so much more quickly than you anticipated because you're so focused on just the short term.
Yeah, and having that teamwork, like you said, where one can focus on short, one can focus on long, one can focus on one skill set, one can focus on the other. Sometimes dividing and conquering doesn't necessarily have to be a spouse, as it is in our case, but having a great business partner, having a great network of people who can help you really focus, but also be bringing you new opportunities to pivot, so that the story that you tell shows that you have a great ability to balance your flexible mindset, but also to be able to just buckle down and focus on something, just get something done. And so that balance there, I think, is really helpful for anybody listening, because we all tend to swing more to one side of the pendulum than another, but you seem really centered that way. And you it's probably one of the secrets of your rapid success so far along this path and getting started and actually taking action and then jumping into commercial the way that you did. And kind of let us paint that picture of where that's heading. Like, where are you pivoting to right now? What kind of things are you looking at?
So on the active side of things, we're still looking at multifamily. That's an asset class where we always love to be in. It's something that we really enjoy. It's recession resilient. We understand that business. We understand how it's run. We understand how to look at it. We really like it. So that's still our core foundation. On the passive side of things is where we're looking to partner with other experts in the area to figure out how do we balance it out, and how do we look at our passive income and really expediting that journey for ourselves if we're not getting the same opportunities or the same amount of opportunities coming out on the multifamily side. And so looking at both sides of things and multiple different areas is where we're at.
That's a great way to do it, because then, like I said, you're able to specialize in what you specialize in, but finding other experts, balancing their active with your passive investing, it allows you to diversify in a much bigger way than you would be if you were trying to do everything yourself. There's a DIY syndrome, shiny object syndrome as well. It's important not to fall into that trap. So, well, the next question is the question that I ask everybody. What is your big passive income adventure bucket list item that you have coming up?
Passive investing bucket list adventure.
Yeah. So if you were going to do something like you're going to take a big vacation, or you're going to retire, or like quit jobs, like what's coming up for you that you're like, hey, this is what we're sticking on the vision board and what is driving us right now to work towards this thing?
I think at the same time as we're building up our passive income and we're on this adventure right now, it's making sure
Hmm.
that we're enjoying everything to the fullest as much as we can today. And so we're not just waiting 5 years, 10 years down the line to take that trip that we've been planning or that we want to do or spend it with our kids, things like that. It's like we want to be in the moment, we want to be present, really enjoy and really taking that fullest. So it's exciting that we've been able to grow passive investing in our real estate things. And I think what we're looking for is to continue to build that out and grow it even further and see how far we can go, because we get so much satisfaction by looking down 5, 10 years and looking back and see, hey, this is what we've accomplished. Hey, we can share this with our kids. And so I think that's what we're looking forward to the most, is being able to look back and see how much we've accomplished so far.
So it's more of an incremental approach, because as you're incrementally approaching your passive income goals, like your income, what you're looking for in order to replace or supplement what you're working on, you're also incrementally enjoying the fruits of that project by, like you said earlier, it's not about how much you can slash your lifestyle. It's not about how much you can give up to go on to the delayed gratification later. It's just that incremental buildup of being able to enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it. That's actually
Right.
really unusual.
Because you never want to get into a situation, at least from me and how I take a look at our situation and where we want to be. It's I never want to be in a place where I look back and I'm like, oh, I wish I spent more time with my kids, or I wish I took that vacation when I had the opportunity and I had the cash to be able to do it. And so it's like trying to enjoy these things as we go along and living in the moment, because ultimately we don't know how long we have on this earth or how long we have to live. And so if we're able to incrementally enjoy it as we go along, it makes it so much more enjoyable and satisfactory.
Again, it shows that ability that you have to be able to balance, because you're able to balance your short-term enjoy life now with your long-term investing goals. Again, that's a skill that a lot of people are too far one way or to the other way. So I think what I'm getting out of this, I'm hearing again that you're able to prioritize and balance so that you can actually do multiple things at once without really compromising the quality of any one of those things.
To the best
Yeah.
of our
Well,
ability.
yeah, it's balancing acts are very active. Think about when you're working out and you're on a balance board or something. It's a constant vigilance, and it's definitely a skill that can improve the more that you exercise it. And so I think a lot of people can really relate to your journey, because they're not wanting to put everything off until the future. But there may also be people who are wanting to enjoy everything right now. And you're showing both sides of that spectrum, that there is some middle ground that you can hit on and be content and happy as you're, like I said, it's actively balancing it, but at the same time, the effort to strike that is really worth it.
It is. It is. I would agree.
How can people get a hold of you, Aileen? And more importantly, why should people get a hold of you after the show?
So our whole thing is we just want to share and just educate other people and let them know that, hey, there's a better way to do this. There's other ways and opportunities that are out there, and surround yourself with those people who are doing other things, and expose yourself to these different opportunities so that you understand and you have a knowledge, because knowledge is very powerful in this space. In anything that you do, by knowing what other people are doing, by putting yourself out there and understanding what things are available to you or the different opportunities, you're able to really hone in on what you yourself want to do. How are you going to achieve your goals? And so me and my husband, we focus on multifamily syndications. So we just put out a passive investor checklist video that we just go through, and how we vet our sponsors and how do we vet other operators in the space. And so they can just go ahead and download that one. It's a free download that they can go. It's bonavestcapital.com/checklist. So if you're just looking to learn a little bit more on how to vet a sponsor, how to look at passive investing, that might be a good place to start.
And what's your website address? So if people would like to invest with you, they can go get that information and get in touch with you.
Sure. They can go to bonavestcapital.com.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure I get that in there. My husband will stick it in as a little thing at the bottom there so people can see it. So thank you so much, Aileen, for joining us today. I find your story to be exceptional and relatable at the same time, which is you just have shown us some fantastic things and given us some actionable stuff that we can actually go do afterwards so that we can get our investing journey started or build that if we're already starting down that road. So thank you for joining us today and for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me, Emma.
Aileen just took us on a wild ride, showing us so many things that we can emulate. Her advice of finding people who are doing what you want to be doing and copying that can apply to our passive income journey in so many ways. She gave me a lot of tips on how I can better balance what we're dealing with in our own life. And we've got kids that we're trying to raise and have great experiences for them. At the same time, we're trying to cut our expenses and live a great lifestyle right now. And how do you manage all of those competing concerns? She has some really cool stuff in her background, really unique, but at the same time, very relatable. She's doing the same things that we're all doing right now, working, family life balance, and figuring out what the past, present, and the future represent for each one of us individually. So be sure to reach out to Aileen. They have some great investing opportunities, some educational materials to help you figure out where you are on your own passive income journey. I would love to connect with you after the show as well at highrise.group, HIGHRISE, where we have some investments you can take a look at to see if they're a good fit for you if you're a accredited investor. If you would like to become an active investor, you can check out our weekly club meeting where we pool our capital and go invest in things together as a team. We also have networking events and accountability challenge where you can book some time on my calendar to look at your unique situation and goals and help you get some more direction as you work towards your own passive income adventure. Thank you so much for joining us today. There are lots of episodes that you can listen to between this and our next upload. Be sure to check out our other episodes as you're waiting for our next upload, and be sure to reach out to the guests. You definitely want to use the power of networking as you're going through this process, and each of these guests has something to offer, whether you're looking for investment opportunities or you're looking for potential mentors and partners. Again, thanks for joining us on the show, and we will see you on the next one.